Welcome back to Only Talk Sports, where we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Roach Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Week 0 has come and gone. There was not too many surprises, but Week 1 is coming up, and there's going to be a lot of great games. But I have one more team preview to do before I start to preview the Week 1 games, and that is the Oregon State Beavers. Now, this is a team that's been on the rise in the Pac-12, and it is very sad for the Beavers that right when they start getting really good, the conference is now falling apart, and all of these teams are going to be leaving, and even Oregon State themselves, even though right now they are still in the Pac-12, could be on their way out to the Big 12 as well. But Oregon State, for this last season, they could go out with a bang just like they did last year, where they went 10-3, and they were fantastic. And head coach Jonathan Smith, he's one of those underrated coaches in college football, and he only has a record of 26-31 at Oregon State, and at most schools, that would be a horrible record. But what he took over at Oregon State was a terrible football team, but he has slowly built up the Beavers and have made them a very competitive team and a team to fear in the Pac-12 as time has gone on. He started out 2-10 at Oregon State, then he went 5-7, then 2-5 in 2020, and then the last 2 years he's gone 7-6 and 10-3, and he's been getting much better recruiting classes coming to Oregon State, and he finally got a headline transfer addition this offseason in DJ Uiagalelei, one of the most talked about quarterbacks in college football for a variety of reasons. A lot of people are still high on him. Other people are not so high on him, and they're wondering how he's going to do at Oregon State because he had success at Clemson in the first year that he came in for those 2 games against Boston College and Notre Dame when he was at Clemson for Trevor Lawrence. But then when he finally took over the starting duties, he really struggled and was not the same guy. But now he has a chance to turn around his college football career and help prepare him for the NFL. And what better place to do that than with Jonathan Smith and the Oregon State Beavers, where a lot of players that have been underrated have been able to find success and be able to go to the NFL after they left college. But he had to fight this offseason with Bengal Branson, who's been the starting quarterback for Oregon State the past couple years at various times. But DJ Uiagalelei did win the job a couple days ago. It was a tough fight. Now, we don't really know how close of a battle it was, whether Bengal Branson really improved in the offseason and gave DJ a fight for the job, or whether that was just Jonathan Smith allowing those 2 quarterbacks to battle for the job and not make it where there was no battle by already announcing that DJ was the starting quarterback. For whatever the reason, DJ is now the starting quarterback, and I think he can have a lot of success at Oregon State because the Beavers last year went 10-3 despite not having the best quarterback play. They had a good defense, and they had a solid enough offense all around that they were able to win so many games, including against their rival Oregon last year in the Civil War, and that was a fantastic game. And again, they did not have the best quarterback play, but DJ Uiagalelei offers that high-end talent that Oregon State has not had at the quarterback position in many years, and I think he will have more success than he had at Clemson last year, and he should help Oregon State's offense be much more productive and explosive than it was last season. Running back Damian Martinez, he was a solid running back last season. He's going to have a bigger load to carry this season, and wide receiver Silas Bolden, wide receiver Anthony Gold, and wide receiver Josiah Trish round out a trio of receivers that I think will be solid for Oregon State. They're not going to be leading the Pac-12 in receiving yards or in receptions all around, but I do think that their receiving core is good enough to be able to help DJ Uiagalelei have success this season. Tight end Jack Velling had a pretty solid season as a true freshman last year for Oregon State, and I think this year he will take a step forward, so I'm liking Oregon State's offense. It's not one of the best in the Pac-12, but it is a really solid offense, and you have DJ Uiagalelei leading that offensive attack with the talent that he has. I feel like that the Beavers offense should be fine this season. On defense, they had defensive tackle James Rawls, linebacker Calvin Hart, safety Katan Oladapo, and cornerback Jaden Robinson. Oregon State's defense, they don't have some of the top-end talent in the Pac-12. USC, Oregon, some of those other schools have those higher-end recruits, but Oregon State finds these diamond in the rough players, and that's what Jonathan Smith is just so good at. He's built this team throughout the years, and he's gotten all of these 3- and low 4-star recruits to be able to mesh together and have a really solid defense, and those top defensive players were solid last year, and I think they'll have great seasons again this year. Oregon State's defense has a lot of veterans, a lot of seniors on that defense, and they were able to hold USC last year only 17 points in Corvallis. If they're able to improve on that this year and do even better, despite the fact that they did allow Oregon to have a lot of points last year, they weren't perfect on defense. I do think their defense will be even better and will be able to hold a lot of teams' explosive offense in the Pac-12 to maybe a little bit fewer points than they normally average. And then kicker Everett Hayes, he's a senior as well. Oregon State just has a very experienced team. A lot of guys on their team are juniors and seniors, and that's a really good thing, especially for a team that is built on more underrated players. You want them to be veterans and have experience because that allows you to be able to compete against some of those more top-end talent talented teams like USC that have a lot of freshmen and sophomores that are preparing for the draft. I think Oregon State's team is built very well, and Jonathan Smith's done a fantastic job. Now on to the schedule, because this is where all this is going to come together for Oregon State, how they perform against the schedule in the Pac-12 in the final season of its existence the way that we know it. There's a lot of great teams this year, and it's going to be a tough schedule for Oregon State. They start the year at San Jose State. That's going to be a tough game because San Jose State, they were really solid against USC last week. They were not able to pull off the upset against the Trojans, but they put up 28 points on USC's defense, even though USC's defense isn't the best. But I feel like Oregon State having to go on the road could make it a little bit tougher, but I still think the Beavers will win. Then they play UC Davis. That's an easy win. Then they play San Diego State at home. That's not a slam dunk win. The Aztecs are a solid team in the Mountain West, but I still think that Oregon State should win that game, especially if they are the team that a lot of people are thinking they're going to be this season. Then they have at Washington State. That is a sneaky game to open Pac-12 play. Washington State's tough to play in Pullman. I feel like Oregon State will be favored in this game. They should win this game, but it's not going to be an automatic win for sure for the Beavers. They'll have to play really solid in this game, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on DJ Uiagalelei to find a way to be able to win in that environment in Pullman. Then they have Utah at home. Utah's much easier to play when they're not at Rice-Eccles, so I think that this helps Oregon State that they have Utah at home. It will give them a much better chance to win. Reser Stadium is very tough for any opponent to have to go up and play at, and I think that Oregon State will have a really good shot to win, but it's not going to be easy against Utah, especially if Cam Rising is healthy and playing at a high level. Then they have at Cal. Oregon State should win that game. The interesting things can sometimes happen when Cal's at home. Then they have UCLA at home. The Bruins have been much better under Chip Kelly the last couple years. They have Dante Moore, a really talented quarterback, and I feel like UCLA could cause some problems for Oregon State, but it is at Oregon State. Still will be very tough for UCLA to win that one. Then they have at Arizona and at Colorado. These are two games that you look at Oregon State's roster and you look at the way that they've been playing the last couple of years versus Arizona and Colorado, then you would think Oregon State should easily win both of these games. But Colorado, they've got primetime Deion Sanders. They've got a completely overhauled roster, so that's not going to be an easy game on the road. Boulder's always a tough place to play as well. And Arizona in the desert on the road is always tough as well. A lot of teams get tripped up in the desert because you're having to travel so far to play Arizona, and the Wildcats do have a pretty solid home crowd as well. So don't be surprised if Oregon State accidentally slipped up against one of these teams, but they should win both of these games. Then they play Stanford at home. Stanford has a first-year head coach. It's at Oregon State. That should not be too much of a threat there. Then they play Washington at home and at Oregon to close out the season. That is a gauntlet of a two-game stretch. Yes, having Washington at home is solid, just like having Utah at home, but still, Michael Penix, Kalen DeBoer, that's going to be a tough offense for Oregon State's defense to slow down. And even though it's in Reser Stadium, that's not going to be an easy game for Oregon State. And at Oregon to close out the season, you know that Oregon wants to get revenge on the Beavers because of the fact Oregon lost to Oregon State last season. It's a tough rivalry game, and it's going to be hard for Oregon State to beat Oregon in Autzen, even though Oregon State has done it before. Now, looking at that schedule, it's not easy, but Oregon State has enough talent and a lot of veteran experience, I think, to have a very successful season with the schedule. I think their ceiling's 10-2. I could see the Beavers going 10-2 with this gauntlet of a schedule. It'd be very tough for them to do so. You would think they lose to Oregon possibly in that scenario, and maybe Utah or the Washington game, and then find a way to not slip up in any of the other games that they'll more than likely be favored in. Oregon State could go 10-2. They avoid USC, which is really solid, but still a very tough schedule, but I think Oregon State can go 10-2. I think that they're 4-6-6. They could lose to Oregon, they could lose to Washington, they could lose to Utah, and then maybe slip up against San Jose State or San Diego State, UCLA, maybe at Colorado as well. That would put them at 6-6. I don't see it happening, but that would mean that DJ Uiagalelei is not playing at a high level. He's still struggling like he was at Clemson last year, and Jonathan Smith just cannot get that offense figured out. Maybe the defense doesn't take a step forward like we think it will, and they'll struggle against some of these high-octane offenses in the Pac-12. Again, worst-case scenario for Oregon State is 6-6. I don't see it, but that is a possibility. But my record prediction for the Beavers in 2023, I feel like they'll go 9-3 in this college football season. I think they're going to have a good season. I think DJ Uiagalelei will have success. He might have some growing pains early on, but he's got some easier games to help him build his confidence before he gets to Pac-12 play. They avoid USC. They have a tough schedule, but I feel like it's manageable, and a lot of their tougher games are at home, and I feel like Oregon State will have a lot of success against those teams, and they'll find a way to win those tricky games on the road. Jonathan Smith's a coach that I believe in. I think he's a really good coach, and he's done a great job on both sides of the ball with the Beavers. My record prediction, again, for the Oregon State Beavers is 9-3, and I think they'll have a really successful college football season in 2023. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below what you think that Oregon State's record will be in college football in 2023, and whether you think that they'll do better or worse or right at 9-3. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I will see you next time.